All right, today we are looking at in our quick hit video, we are looking at fractions and then going a little bit beyond. So again, a fraction is very simply just division. So we know division, we can use a division box. We're dividing A by B, or we can write it as a fraction, or we can use our division symbol, which is really just a zoomed in version of what a fraction would be, like a number over another number. So again, down the road, most commonly when we're working with division, we'll use a fraction because a lot of times we're dividing an expression by another expression, not just a number by another number. But you may see it in our books in any three of these ways. Again, a fraction. A lot of times it's easier to express a fraction as this instead of as a decimal, because a decimal, like 1 divided by 3, is 0.3 repeating forever. So if we're trying to put that into our calculator, or eventually we're going to have to round it. So a lot of times we like to work with fractions. When we're adding fractions, we need to have common denominators. And when we're adding, how we do it, I have 1/3 plus 1/3. Okay, what I do is I add the numerators. Again, they already have common denominators, the same number in the bottom. If they don't, as we'll see in a second, we have an extra step that we need to do. So 1 plus 1 is 2. And then we don't add 3 plus 3. We just carry that because it's a common denominator. If I have a third of a pizza plus another third of a pizza, I have 2/3 of a pizza. Okay, so we just carry that over, and that ends up being in our solution. So really, once we have the common denominators, addition or subtraction, we just perform that operation of the numerators and then end up with our fraction over our numerator over whatever the common denominator is. And then if we need to reduce, we do that. If there's any common factors, this one, obviously both are prime numbers, so can't reduce that down anymore. Here we have an example where we're adding a fraction, okay, but we have 8 and 4, so not the same numbers, obviously. We need to come up with a common denominator, and we want to have the least common denominator. We can do 8 times 4. Both of those would go into it, but again, then we're going to be creating a really large common denominator and end up having to do a lot of reducing down at the end. We can do that. I just think we're creating more work just for the sake of creating more work. So what we do is we think multiples. 8 times 1, 8 times 2, 8 times 3, 4, 5. Don't have to go that high because then we do 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Aha, 8 and 8. So we really only have to change this one. So we rename it. I do 4 times 2 equals 8. Now to keep this fraction equivalent, I have to multiply top and bottom by the same number because 2 over 2 is equal to 1. So I can't just say, well, 1/4 and 1/8 are the same because they're not. So I multiply by 2 over 2. This one is already over 8, so I don't have to rename that one. Okay, 1 times 2. So again, just multiply your numerators. And then 4 times 2 is 8, your denominators. And as we just said, we carry over this denominator and we just add, in this case, the numerators. 7/8, can't reduce that down anymore. So we're done. So again, numerator over denominator. It's division. When we're working with fractions, addition or subtraction, we need to have common denominators. We also have work with fractions when we're using mixed numbers or improper fractions. Improper fraction is just a fraction greater than 1. So the numerator is greater than the denominator, but we can still work with those just the same as we're working with these basic 1/3, 1/4, these easier fractions to work with. So again, subtraction. So first thing I need to have is common denominators. I do. In this example, since we have a mixed number, just like when we have a decimal value or a whole number, when we're adding or subtracting, we go all the way to the furthest place value to the right and then work our way to the left, just like if we have 22 minus 9. Oh, well, 2 minus 9, I can't do that, so I borrow 12 minus 9, and I do that. So it's the same thing we're going to do with a mixed number because it's still just a number. Okay. So I look at my fraction. That's the furthest thing to the right, 1 minus 2. Well, I can't do that. That gives me a negative number. So just like in that other example, I'm going to borrow a whole number from here. So 4, and I'm going to add a whole 1 to 1/5. So 1 and 1/5 becomes 6/5. So I can think of the 1 that I'm adding is 5/5, 5/5, because that's equal to 1. So I'm adding this to that. The reason, just like we borrowed in the 22 minus 9 example, because we want to make sure that we're, obviously this entire number is larger than this one, we're not going to get a negative solution. So 5/5 to 6/5, or to 1/5 is 6/5. Okay, now we can go ahead and 6. I know this is a mixed number with an improper fraction. It looks kind of funny, but we have to do that in order to subtract. So 6 minus 2 is 4, still over 5, because common denominators. And then our whole numbers is the next value to the left. So 4 minus 2 is 2. 2 and 4/5, can't reduce it down. So there we go. So when we're writing a mixed number, just make this whole number a little bit larger and kind of, even with that division bar. And then the fraction a little bit smaller. I actually even was grading a test, and I had someone that, it looks something like this. And I was like, was this 2 2/5 or 22/5? Again, this is a little bit more obvious. This one, it's like, I don't know what number they're trying to write down. So just make a little mental note of that. Okay, and then if we have our division, again, when we're multiplying or dividing a fraction, we don't need common denominators. That makes life a little bit easier. So if I'm multiplying a simple fraction here, I multiply the numerator, and then I multiply the denominator, and I reduce if I can. In that case, I can't. So that's just a pretty simple example. So the first thing, this is a mixed number, so I'm going to need to convert it to an improper fraction. How I do that is I take this whole number, multiply it by the denominator, and then add the numerator to it. So I'm going to multiply, and I'm going to add whatever this total is to that, and then it's still going to be over this denominator. So 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, still over 2. Same thing over here. 1 times 3 is 3, plus 1 is 4/3. Now, anytime we're dividing by a fraction, it's the same as multiplying by a reciprocal. And any number can have a reciprocal. So even a whole number can have a reciprocal, because 2 we could write as 2 over 1, flip it, becomes 1 over 2. So that's reciprocal. Okay, so in this, we keep this, we change, and then we flip. Keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. So 5/2 is going to stay. Division becomes multiplication, and 4 over 3 becomes 3 over 4. Now I look, 5 times 3 is 15 over 2 times 4, which is 8. And then this is reduced down unless the test or quiz or homework question says write as an improper fraction or a mixed number. I'm okay with either, as long as it's reduced. So we could say, well, 15/8, no common factors that I'm seeing, or we could say 8 goes into 15 one time with a remainder of 7, and we don't say remainder 7 anymore. That 7 that's remaining is still being divided by 8, so 1 7/8. Okay, that's our quick hit today on review of fractions. Keep working hard. You guys are doing a good job.